the force of evil plans to make you its possession. And it will if you let it destroy every lie.
Oh, there's it. Okay. All right. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Buddhist Voices for Immigration Justice, Compassion in Action. I first want to take this time to thank each of the panelists and the audience for participating in this critical event. This event is a joint venture project between the Buddhist Coalition for Democracy and the Insight Meditation Center of Washington. The intention for this event is to engage in bringing awareness about immigration issues, providing understanding and compassion as we face systemic injustices. This town hall event will invite Buddhist practitioners, teachers, legal experts, grassroots activists, and others to explore the intersection of Buddhist teachings, human rights, and immigration justice, and how they can take action. In Buddhism, we call this engaged Buddhism, which is a form of Buddhism that integrates mindfulness and compassion into daily life and social action to address the suffering in the world. We have two panels. We have panel one, Dharma teacher Dr. Tara Brach, Dr. Marisela Gomez, and Lama Owens, focusing on teachings related to compassion, nonviolence, interdependence, and ethical action. Panel two is Dharma teacher and community activist Dr. Marisela Gomez and immigrant attorney Lenni Benson, focusing on current immigration policy landscape, how it impacts vulnerable populations, and how Buddhist communities can engage within legal bounds when dealing with law enforcement entities such as ICE. And Dr. Gomez will share community stories and highlight on the ground information about how to transform our Buddhist ethical commitments into action. After which we will have a Q&A session. Now, I'd like for us to become grounded before we actually get into the program. I invite you to close your eyes or lower your gaze or just leave them open. Bring your attention to your breath. Noticing the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. Be aware of the physical sensations of breathing, like the rising and falling of your belly or the air at the tip of your nose. If the mind wanders, gently guide your attention back to the breath without judgment. Breathing in, become aware of the suffering in the world that is caused by fear, discrimination, and violence. Breathing out, give rise to compassion for the victims of fear, discrimination, and violence. Breathing in, become aware of the suffering caused by exploitation and social injustice. Breathing out, give rise to loving kindness for the victims of social injustice. Breathing in, become aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech. Breathing out, give rise to loving thoughts and mindful words in your heart. Breathing in, determined not to act out of fear or discrimination. Breathing out, determined to foster nonviolence in all actions of body, speech, and mind. Breathing in, feel compassion for those you may have hurt with your own words. Breathing out, determined to listen deeply and speak mindfully. Imagine a person you have a conflict with and acknowledge the feelings that arise. Breathing in, acknowledge the pain and suffering of this person. Breathing out, wish them well by repeating a phrase like, may you be well, happy, and peaceful. May you be free from suffering. Extend this loving kindness to all beings, wishing for their well-being and peace. Bringing in, notice your whole body. Breathing out, relax and release any tension in your body. Feel the happiness of practicing compassion and mindful action with yourself, with others, with your community. Now, I invite you to bring your awareness back to this present moment. Look around you. May we have gratitude for each other as we continue this event. I thank you for your practice. Now I'd like to introduce to you Luisa Montero Diaz as a moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, thank you so much for that meditation. I know I needed it. Thank you. So I want to echo Brenda's welcoming words. Welcome tonight. We have people joining from all parts of this country and even some international locations. So welcome to all of you, and also welcome to all parts of you tonight. I know you might be bringing all kinds of questions, emotions, experiences, and all of that is welcome tonight. Welcome even your anger and your frustration and your fears and your hopes are all welcome here tonight. So this event is being recorded, and so there will be people who will be listening to this, in addition to those who have gathered here today to listen to this live. And by the way, all of you will get a copy of the recording if you want to listen or go back and listen to it or share it with others. Again, as Brenda said, my name is Luisa Montero Diaz. I'm going to be moderating the two panels today. And just to say, I'm affiliated with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, and I've actually been affiliated with IMCW since its inception. I'm a meditation student and have been for many years, and have been teaching meditation since the 90s. And I'm a proud immigrant. I'm a first-generation immigrant, and spent most of my professional career working in the fields of community and youth development, specifically with a focus on Latin America and immigrants in the United States. And I'm a proud immigrant. So just like many of you, I am sure, I also have many friends and actually family members who are currently being directly impacted and affected by unkind and brutal practices and policies. And so I also just want to say that I'm personally grateful that this discussion is happening, and grateful to all of you for being part of it and being interested in it. So before we get started, there's a couple of housekeeping rules that I just need to go through. For some of you, if you want to use closed captioning, just reminding you that you can find that at the bottom of your Zoom screen, typically on the taskbar. And there's a button that's called Show Captions, so you can use that if you want captions tonight. And also, we're going to have time for questions at the end of the panels. And if you'd like to submit one, feel free to submit a question at any point. And you can do that using the Q&A feature that's also at the bottom of your Zoom, your taskbar, at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a little icon that says Q&A with a little question mark. Now, if you don't see that, you can click on the down at the taskbar where it says More, and there are three little dots. If you click on that, you'll see the Q&A box open. And once you've opened it, then it will be on your taskbar. So you can use that to type in your questions. And lastly, before we start, I just wanted to thank all of you who have already provided a donation to support this event. A large portion of the proceeds at this town hall will be donated to the National Immigration Project, which is an organization doing really amazing work to help immigrants both on the ground and also in the court systems. And you will receive more information about this in an email, and a follow-up email that you'll receive after the event. It will include a list of resources, and as part of that, you'll see the National Immigration Project and a link there if you'd like to find out more about that organization. And it's not too late to donate. You can donate throughout this event, and even after the event, we'll be providing a Donna link for you to do that if you're called to do that. So let's get started. Our first panel tonight, I want to welcome again, echo Brenda's welcoming to our panelist, Lama Owens, who, as many of you know, is a Buddhist teacher in the Kagyu School of Tibetan Buddhism. He's also an internationally known author and activist, and is doing some incredible work on social change and spiritual healing. And then we have Tara Brach, who's a spiritual teacher who's for decades has been blending Western psychology and insight meditation practices, and so committed to bringing mindful attention and compassionate engagement to ourselves and to our world. And then Marisela, Dr. Marisela Gomez, a community activist. She's a scientist, she's a physician, she's a public health professional, and a meditation and Buddhist teacher. So welcome to the three of you this evening and today. And each of these panelists are going to share a little bit about their views on how Buddhist practice informs our response to what's happening in our world, particularly or specifically in this event to immigrants in the U.S. right now. So we're going to hear from each one of them. They're going to each spend a few minutes just giving some general thoughts on what they are seeing in the country today and how maybe even it's impacting personally. And also, I'd like for each one of you to also, if you can, in your introductory remarks, perhaps more specifically, any thoughts you have on the issue of immigration and how you see the Buddha's teachings intersecting with this topic. Perhaps how can the Buddha's teachings guide our action and, frankly, our capacity to be with what is happening. So we're going to start with Lama Rod. We'll go first, and then Tara will follow Lama Rod, and then Marisela, if you could follow Tara. Thank you, and welcome, Lama Rod.
Thank you so much. And just deep gratitude to everyone who organized this important event and put all of this together. It's really wonderful to be a part of this conversation. So again, my name is Lama Rod Owens. I use he, him pronouns. And I am currently being held by the traditional ancestral lands, the unceded lands of the Creek, Muskogee, and Cherokee communities, communities who are still very present on this land, but who have been deeply decimated by the system, right, of colonization. We call this land Atlanta now. And it's interesting because I think this acknowledgement of the land is, I think, very close to the root of how I feel about like everything that's going on in the country, how I've always felt about laws or policies that really restrict or police or over surveil people. And that deep root of belief for me is that everyone deserves to be free, right? Everyone deserves to have the right to be safe, to have access to resources, to sustain and to support their life. Um, like everyone deserves to have the right to determine like the course of their life. And we all have a right to belong to community, to be a part of community that helps us to kind of guide the decisions that we're making about our lives, to guide these decisions, to make sure that they're decisions that are really about being free and safe and cared for, making sure that these decisions that we're making are reducing harm or reducing violence against ourselves and against others. And for me, too, that is another way that I think about compassion, right? Um, I am really influenced by the practice of Tara, not Tara Brach, but of course, Tara. But the practice of the female Buddha of compassion, Tara. In Tibetan, her name is Dolma or Jolma. And Jolma translates as the mother of liberation, the female liberator, right? And in the Tibetan tradition, we understand Tara to guide us from the shore of suffering to this liberated experience of spaciousness, openness, fluidity. Um, this kind of navigating from rigidity to spaciousness is really in this tradition based on empathy. And empathy is when we begin to understand ourselves as others, that we begin to imagine and even begin to get curious about the experiences of others, right? And this curiosity begins to somehow slowly decenter the sense of I, right? And when I is decentered, space opens up for us to experience or to get curious, or to hold the space for the experiences of others. Um, the practice of Tara has been crucial for me in my development as a practitioner, right? And the fierceness of Tara's story really empowers me, really inspires me to be in the world right now with a lot of clarity and a lot of fierceness. For those of you who know me, I tend to really come from the space of abolitionism, and abolitionism, or where my abolition is based on the tradition and the history of anti-slavery abolition. And for me, abolition is really about dreaming, well, dreaming into reality a new or more liberated future where everyone has access to the resources that they need to be well, right? And I think just in this moment here in the United States, we're experiencing really a collapse of the institutions, the systems that have really been at the forefront of restricting resources, right? And has also been at the forefront of kind of like compiling or over consuming resources for certain groups of people as well, the 1%, the wealthy, right? For instance. And I think these systems that have perpetuated this inequality and inequity is really beginning to experience a lot of disruption. And in that disruption, we're beginning to experience um, a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain, right? And sometimes, often that's psychological, physical pain, but it's also that suffering is also really related to our own sense of safety, right? That there are marginalized, targeted communities in this country and around the world, absolutely, but here in this country, um, who are experiencing even more targeting, surveillance, discrimination, immigrants, people of color, our transgender community as well, communities that are being scapegoated and actually reflect some of these just really sinister ways in which communities or countries have attempted to use the most marginalized communities or groups to distract from larger policies and larger decisions being made that really put all of us at risk as well. Um, so my compassion here is the recognition that we are all suffering, and therefore, what is the choice that I and all of us need to be making to disrupt this suffering? And right, and how fierce do we need to get about that disruption, right? And lastly, Tara teaches us to move from kind of passivity to really direct action. And that's really the fruition of compassion. It's what are you doing to end suffering, right? So moving from aspirational, into direct action, right? And this is where I want to see us moving into the direct action of disrupting systems and policies that put the most marginalized of us at continued risk, right? But to free the most marginalized means that we all get free. So I like to end my comments there for now. Sorry, I may have gone a little longer.
No, thank you so much, Lamarad. Thank you for those words. Yeah, lots to already think about, and questions I think have started coming in. So we'll move to Tara now. Please, Tara.
Mm. Well, first, thank you, Lamarad. I mean, I always learn from you and get inspired, and that was powerful. And I want to say, as others, I'm just so glad this is happening. And thank you to each. Thank you for coming, for being part of this. If I had to say, my perception of the world right now, I'd kind of say, like he said, for Lamarad, that I think we feel it, that longing to have a world where there's a reverence towards life, where there's a right for safety and freedom, a taking care of each other, a knowing our belonging. And that we're at this time right now where we're sliding more than usual into the shadows of targeting those that are most vulnerable. And it is a suffering for all of us. So what I'd like to do is maybe carry forward a little bit with the way of paying attention and practicing. I think if we all just said, like, what most matters in the world right now, it's our efforts to wake up our heart, collectively waking up compassion. And it's the heart of Buddhism. And maybe what I want to emphasize is that sometimes our compassion is abstract. What I mean by that is that we hear about violence, climate catastrophes, extreme inequities, and we'll go, oh, that's terrible. But it's not embodied, the tenderness that really moves us to act. As Lama Rod said, what are we doing to end the suffering or disrupting? And I want to name that I'm here speaking as a privileged white person that's living in relative safety, although we're all in absolute danger, but just relative. So I witness this in myself, that I can hear about terrible suffering, but if it feels far away, it's not as real. So what I'd like to explore is what it takes for our compassion to become so real and full that it's that the heart that's really quivering, that we really feel the tenderness that leads us to be bold and to act, to be passionate and compassionate. So our archetype of this is the Bodhisattva. It's kind of an evolutionary archetype. And I love thinking of it that way, that the Bodhisattva's heart is wide enough to be touched by all the suffering beings, and that our path is just to keep widening and tenderizing and responding. I mean, the deep aspiration of the Bodhisattva, and perhaps you can just feel it in yourself, that may whatever's happening, may this awaken compassion. So we're all here, we're all awakening beings, and you wouldn't be here if you didn't care, and if you didn't sense the need for us to deepen our intention collectively right now. I mean, evolutionarily, if you think of it, way, way back, we developed compassion mainly for our kin, and our small band of fellow humans, right? And even now, when we're stressed or afraid, and think of the atmosphere that we're breathing, it's thick with fear and with bad othering. So when we're stressed, our compassion contracts even more. And then add to that, and I want to say this, that research shows that those with more privilege or wealth often show less spontaneous empathy. And it's not because of badness, it's because comfort creates a bubble. We get insulated from the daily realities that remind us of our belonging, our vulnerability. So the point is, the reason I love this gathering is we have to train our hearts to wake up on purpose. And there's 3 qualities we're waking up in compassion. And one I've named, which is that embodied tenderness where we feel another's vulnerability. And the other is a mindful presence, which gives us this capacity to stay, to actually be with. And then there's action, the movement of the caring heart. To feel the vulnerability, to feel the terror of those facing this country's terrorism, the immigration policies, means turning to the real lives behind the headlines. There's a writer who's collected poems by immigrants in detention, and she says, this isn't poetry. This is what it feels like to live in fear every single day, when ICE vans circle your block, when you hear your father's silent cries, when your little sister begs, don't let them take mama, when the silence after someone is abducted says everything. They are disappearing us is the book I want to let you know about, because I didn't write it down beforehand, but They Are Disappearing Us by A. Lopez. So how do we practice to wake up from being in a bubble? There's two ways that we block waking up. And one of them is that we have a conditioning not to let ourselves feel, so the compassion stays in our head. And the other is we have the habit of getting overwhelmed and possessed, so then we lose mindful presence. So in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a compassion training that you've already had a taste of with Brenda, who started us with the breath in such a beautiful way. And I just want to add on a little more to this training, because in my life, what I have been finding is the more we use our imagination, what's it like being you, the more powerfully we actually let ourselves be touched. So just close with a brief reflection that uses imagination and the breath, if you will. As you did before, just invite yourself to be here, to settle, and to feel your body and your breath. To feel that aspiration, may these circumstances awaken compassion. And then some questions. Can you imagine loving someone, a partner, a parent, a child, and knowing they could be taken from you at any moment without warning, without goodbye? So just imagine, pick a particular person, and just breathe in for those that experience that pain of knowing that beloveds can be disappeared in any moment, breathing in for all those experiencing that. Imagining and breathing out your care, your prayer, breathing out and letting it be held in a larger space of love. Can you imagine the sound of a knock on your door, not knowing whether it's a neighbor or an ice raid that will change your life forever? Just imagine that, wherever you live, that knock on the door. Let yourself breathe in for those that live with this fear. Be touched. Let yourself breathe out your prayer. Let this fear be held in a larger field of loving presence. Can you imagine telling your child what to do if you don't come home? It might be your child, a friend's child. Imagine that. Where to go, who to call, how to stay safe. And breathe with that. What it would be like. Offering your prayer. Can you imagine opening your heart to all who are living with this fear every day? Breathing for all that long for safety and belonging. Feeling your heart's willingness in the days to come to deepen attention, to imagine what's it like being you, to breathe and offer your care, and sense how that care might be translated into action. Feeling our shared prayer now to all who are living with fear. May you know you are not alone. May you find refuge in knowing your belonging, that you are loved. May our world evolve towards greater justice, compassion, and freedom for all beings. Thank you, friends. And again, I'm aware that I took way more time, and I apologize for doing that. I got carried away.
No, thank you for being carried away, Tara. Yeah, thank you for that. I know that many were touched by that meditation. And I'm just reminded of what you said, that we wouldn't be here if we didn't care. And yet there's so much that we can learn and do to continue to open our hearts to the suffering that sometimes it's hard to hold. Thank you. Marisela, Dr. Marisela Gomez is next.
Marisela, bowing in from the ancestral lands of the Piscataway people, Lumbee, Susquehanna, and other tribes, today known as Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States. I'm looking at the time. I want to try and stay on time here. My name is Marisela Gomez, and my pronouns are she and they. It's good to be with you. I want to also bring in ancestor Thich Nhat Hanh Thai, the tradition that I teach in and practice in, which is the Plum Village tradition, or the Plum Village community of engaged Buddhism, and honor this lineage, honor our dear teacher, Sister Chan Kong, all those who allow us to continue to practice to get free together. So I want to talk about a little bit of the history of the country, because there's a reason this is happening. It's not this one-time event, and oh my gosh, we have built a country here in the United States of America based on exploitation, colonization, land taken, extraction, killing. And so the fact that the attack on people we have deemed as immigrants, which itself, we can interrogate that a little bit. That's what our practice is. It's an investigation. It's a looking deeply to see what is there and what we want to keep and what we want to not keep. All in the practice of, as we've been sharing, compassion, all in the practice of deeper understanding, and all in the practice of insight. And so it feels to me that this moment of violence and attack on our siblings invites us into a deeper looking, because once we take care of this, there's still a foundation of this country that will continuously invite in the demonization, marginalization, exploitation, and killing of another group, right? It's why it's so easy for a Trump administration to target and eliminate and disappear the people we are calling immigrants today. Myself an immigrant, by the way. I am from Belize in the Caribbean, a proud Creole person. And one of the reasons I haven't given up my status and my proud immigrant status is because I have never fully been invited into this country. I'm always reminded that I'm an immigrant. And so because we have a country that holds that way of being with each other, it allows this kind of separation and continued segregation that can be easily deployed when we have an administration like the one that we have today, you see. And so what is happening now requires our immediate attention and action, as we've been sharing. And what is happening now is also a wake-up call to why something like this can happen. I mean, do we even wonder why this can happen? Do we wonder that it's a repeat of segregation of the 50s and 40s and 60s of Black bodies? Do we see that this is really just the continuation of that? Do we see the way that Gaza was attacked and continues to be attacked even as we speak? When we sit and we say, I can't believe that's happening. Right? It's amazing actually when I hear that. I'm always and often I sit there and I wonder, really? Really though? And so what it tells me is that this deep looking that our practice invites us into, let's practice. This is our practice, is to look deeply, to see what is there and what is not there, to listen deeply, to offer kind words, to be compassionate, to, as Tara was sharing, to try to put ourselves into the body, to embody, right? The Lojong practices of can we actually take in the suffering in this way that we actually are really connected to it. So part of what I want to share is this this acknowledgement of suffering, this acknowledgement of the suffering that built the country, the United States of America as we know it, because that's the first noble truth. Suffering exists. And this suffering, and the second one is the path leading to it. Yeah. And we have to abandon it. But we haven't abandoned the path leading to the suffering of colonization. We haven't abandoned the whole process yet. And so because we are still afraid to acknowledge the suffering that brought the country to the place it is today, and because we haven't looked at it and really interrogated it and say, oh yeah, this is something that happened. So why did it happen? Like, what was the hatred in our heart? What was the greed in our heart? Yeah, what the hindrances? You see, this is, when I hear, well, how does our practice go into our everyday action? I say greed, hatred, and delusion, because they're the foundation of how we've taken our own individual way of seeing the world and acting in the world to the social and to the political level. And here we are today with an administration that can, at a pen, with a pen, the movement of a pen, not even a movement of a pen, with a finger on a submit button, on a device, and people disappear. So I invite us into this deep looking. It's okay to look. It's okay to look at the suffering and to face the fear. This is our practices. As Tai says, the art of suffering is knowing how to suffer. Knowing how to suffer. And knowing how to suffer requires us to understand where the suffering is coming from so that we can move beyond that. And I feel we haven't quite moved beyond a country that has built a foundation that is always ready for the emergence of attacks on immigrants, attack on trans people, attacks on women, misogyny that continues or attacks in the Middle East. You see class demonizing poor people. Oh, they're so lazy. They're so this. They deserve that, to live in public housing their entire lives. They don't try. Let's get them off that welfare. So what I'm saying is demonization of immigrants has always been the status quo in the United States of America, at least since I've been here. Yeah, and my parents migrated before I did, and me and my two brothers came, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, and they told me the same story, you see. So what I'm saying is that continues today. It's more now, right? Because there's this, maybe it was the practice and the way people always ask, well, where are you really from? Where are you really from? I know in school I always used to get that. Um, but now it's physical, huh? And it's actually, we're going to pick you up, put you in a van, and take you away. So I know that since all this started, I have not gone into certain neighborhoods because I'm afraid. I live in the city of Baltimore, and I live about 3 blocks south, begins what we call the Latino community, going back that way. And I'm very careful about where I go. I don't go into neighborhoods where all the Latino grocery stores are. I used to go get coconut water on weekends. There'd be trucks out there with coconuts. I dare not go out there now, right? Because even I can identify as Afro-Latin, but because of you put yourself in a certain area, and you're gonna get all swooped up. You know what I mean? That's what it's like now. It's not, people aren't there's no discrimination on whether or not it's wrong place, wrong time right now. Yeah. Unless you're really light skinned, and the person might feel that you're probably not an immigrant. But then the refugees and asylum seekers that are also being targeted and sent back to Ukraine because of their status, right? But that kind of happens in a more specific way, and maybe Lenni will talk with us about some of that. So I'm a minute over my time, and I want to respect the time. So thank you. IMCW for taking this step in inviting in what hatred feels like, what greed looks like, and what ignorance looks like in a very practical way, and asking us, and what are the Buddhist communities going to do about it? Yeah, because I think that is what we might want to be asking ourselves. Yeah. So thank you for listening. Marisela, bowing.
Thank you, Marisela. So Marisela is actually, you're going to hear a little bit from Marisela again. She's wearing a couple of different hats tonight as we move to our second panel. And we're going to do this and hear from Marisela a little bit from a different perspective, and also from Professor Lenni Benson, who I'll introduce in a minute. But keep asking your questions. So we're beginning to get some questions, and once the second panel is done, then we'll engage in a dialogue and entertain some of your questions. We won't be able to get to all of them perhaps, but what we'll do is kind of pick representative questions and then ask them of our presenters. If you have a question that's specific to one of our presenters, please indicate that. That will help us direct them. And just a reminder that the questions, you can click on the little icon at the bottom on the taskbar that has Q&A and a little question mark. And if you don't see that, click on the icon that says more, and with 3 little dots, and you'll see that Q&A box pop up. So with Marisela staying on the screen, we're welcoming Professor Lenni B. Benson from the New York Law School. Hi, Lenni. Lenni's a professor of immigration and human rights, and she founded the Safe Passage Project, which is a nonprofit that recruits and trains and mentors pro bono attorneys aiding immigrant youth. So I think, Marisela, why don't we start with you? Anything that you might want to add from your perspective as an activist, being on the ground as a physician and an organizer, any sort of stories? You started to tell us some of those in terms of your own personal story. Anything that you want to share further in terms of what you're seeing on the ground through your work?
Maybe enjoy a few minutes, and I want to offer some of my time to Lenni, because I know there's a lot that she's bringing in, is around food sovereignty, what we call uh, food insufficiency, which is people. It's a movement to assure that people have food. So the nonprofit I'm involved in, which is called Village of Love and Resistance, VOLAR, we do food mutual aid. And so we also keep an eye on who's offering food. So from where I'm currently located, there's probably like within less than a quarter of a mile, about 4 different places where you can get free food, food banks and places that distribute food. And so what we're noticing on the ground is that there used to be a lot of Latino people who would be coming out for food in any line. Today there's like a block down the street here on Fridays. It's further about 5 blocks that way and like this. And it's changing back a little bit, but about 3 months ago, the people who were in line, it started to shift. You know, you just kind of know, you start to keep an eye on who's not coming out anymore for food. So it really shifted. Weren't many Latino people anymore coming out for food. So I think that's really important, because what that says is that people didn't all of a sudden come into food. It's just that they're not going out because of the fear to get to be pulled in by ICE and even police officers. So people are not getting food, right? And so there's been a movement to try to organize to bring food products to people. But also when you knock on people are afraid of opening the door, even to neighbors. So even if someone historically may, say hi or something, there's such a fear now to just receive something brought to the door. Yeah, so that's like one really very specific thing, is this food insufficiency and the impact it is having on children. The other one is the kids showing up in school. I mean, this is real. You're hearing from teachers across the city about the kids not coming, even though through Casa Maryland here in Maryland does a lot of work with the Latino community and immigrant community in general, and more recently, communities targeted. Even though there's support for people to pick kids up and take them to school because of the fear of the parent going, there's still this fear of letting the kids go out the door. Yeah, there's a big fear there. There's going to court, and that seems to still be fairly active. That is, if someone has a court date, and I'm sure you hear about this in the media, ICE is going to show up at court and try to take people at that place. And so it's having witnesses there to accompany and witness. And it's not that you can really do anything. I mean, you can put your body in between an ICE officer or a police officer or not. But this question came up, and I think this is a real question for us as Buddhists in our preparation, which is, well, how much are you willing to do at these times? If you're going to accompany someone to court, what will you do if ICE comes? Are you going to stop them with your body? And that response is different for everyone, right? It depends on, maybe you're taking care of an elder mother in your home and you can't do that, you see? So I think these are the kinds of conversations that we want to have, and in our action on how we want to be in the communities. How do we want to support? Not everyone will do that. People may not feel safe enough to do that. Yeah. But just be aware that these are times when people who feel more secure and more privileged um, may really want to challenge themselves to see how they'll step up. It's not just physically, right? It's monetarily as well. There's a lot of need for lawyers right now. My God, and Lenny's going to speak to that, or my Buddha, or my Allah, right? There's lots of need for funds right now, to make sure people who are getting pulled in have resources, and there's not enough lawyers who can provide the help that's needed. So the funding for that is really really important. So I'll stop here because I'd like Lenny to have some of my time to really share about the exciting work that she's been involved in and continues to be involved in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Lenny, let me just say that there's a lot that you can share. There's so much information and tips and all kinds of legal information that Lenny can share. We're limited on time, so I know that Lenny's going to maybe talk a little bit about just effective strategy, whatever you want to do, Lenny, in
Yeah.
the time that we had. And you do have, we can run over a little bit, so you
All
do
right.
have, a bit of time to go into that. And thank you for that.
So I want to thank you for having me and thank all of you who are observing, listening, watching the recording later, maybe coming back to the program later to re-engage because it's a lot that you're taking in. And when we were doing our preparation call, I want to thank this group of people because you all were very patient with my anxiety. Because I kept saying, how can I possibly teach you enough law, which is incredibly complex, in 10 to 15 minutes? So let's all accept with a deep breath that I'm not going to turn you into lawyers or sophisticated legal analysts. I did share with this community, and they're going to send you resources after this program, one of the most thoughtful and efficient set of Know Your Rights materials that I've seen in many, many years. I have been in the field of immigration law since 1984. I grew up in Arizona. From the very beginning of becoming a lawyer, I was involved with the ACLU and with the sanctuary movement in Arizona. But because I chose to be the lawyer, I was not doing the same work that the nuns or the priests were doing, or the Baptists or the Episcopalians were doing in ferrying refugees in their cars or keeping them in their homes. I've chosen instead to focus on empowering people to be aware, to be historical, to be knowledgeable, to be a witness, and to take action where they can. And so I want to talk about those concrete things, but encourage you to click on the link that, I'm sorry, my dog is, of course, trying to get my attention right now. Very strange. She's been calm for the first hour. But the encourage you to look at the link of videos. What do I do if ICE knocks at the door? When can I ask for a warrant? When can I take someone into my home? When can I hire someone who doesn't have a work authorization? Is it wrong of me to give someone food or money? These Know Your Rights materials, I think, will go a long way to helping you contextualize and understand the levels of law that may be operating. I want to say, though, that what we're seeing because of social media and because of the shock I think the country's going through in this second Trump administration, the violence and the vigorousness and the rhetoric, particularly Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's constant videos and television spots that are demonizing ahistorical, not true, but are making people fearful of immigrants as criminals or immigrants as thieves or immigrants as takers, constantly running on ABC radio, on Univision, on other media sources, that this is very much more in our view. So in our speakers earlier tonight, they said, we need to look, we need to see, we need to hear. And what we're being exposed to is incredibly painful. it is demonizing. It is full of hatred. It is full of a lot of mistruth as well, which can make some of us even more frustrated, because when one fills the airwaves and our vision with falsity, it's hard to then see through to reality. So I want to encourage us not to look away, and to the degree we can, to listen carefully and then be ready and prepared in calm conversation with our families, with our neighbors, with our communities, to really challenge the factual premise of much of the propaganda. So maybe we could start with immigrants are criminals. People say, I'm here illegally. It is true if you enter the United States and avoid detection, so you've come surreptitiously across a river or across the Canadian border or in the back of a car, never being inspected, that is a misdemeanor. If you copy a VHS tape, which I bet everyone in this group did at some point, or made a cassette tape, I'm talking to those of us who are over 50, or you copied and pasted from a website into something you were quoting, not really respecting the property rights of that copyright holder, and we can debate whether that's a good thing or not, that's a felony. We are all illegal. We are all lawbreakers. There are many laws, such as failure to fully report your income tax or jaywalking in a situation that might imperil the driver or another pedestrian. We break laws all the time, and yet our society feels very comfortable. And immigrants themselves sometimes take on this burden of feeling the weight of law breaking or illegality more viscerally. Now, is it comparable to compare entering the country without inspection, without checking out a point of entry, presenting a visa document, and the theft of intellectual property, or the theft of wages, or the theft of food from another, or the theft by tricking people into investing in a security? I leave that to you and your moral conscience and your philosophy, but I want you to engage with the concept and to recognize the power and the demonization of words. So our slogan is usually no person is illegal, that there may be violations of civil status requirements that then have penalties that are so harsh, we think it must be more serious than it really is. Because someone who can be here 50, 60 years or have US citizen children or US citizen spouses can be deported, we must assume, well, the law must be fair. There must be a reason for this harsh penalty that is in proportion to the violation. This asymmetry, this disproportionality has led many, as Lama Rod was saying, to a view that the only legitimate philosophical approach is abolitionism. We can't have borders. We must get rid of ICE. We should never control migration or detain. That might be one response. For others, it may be, let's look for proportionality. Let's have paths of forgiveness, of reconciliation, of path to status. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, nicknamed DACA, that President Obama put in 2012, is still in litigation. The status of the people who have held children, young people who were brought to this country before 2012, have paid fees, have good records, do not have criminal backgrounds, were given work authorization, that is still in flux and people are still fighting about it. But let's look at the diversion of the litigation and even the act of forgiveness by Mr. Obama to recognize the real cause of the need for such a complex program. Congress has refused to adapt our immigration laws to globalization, to our society, to the reflective of the people we are. There has really not been a positive immigration law reform since 1990. And most of the laws that have gone into effect from 1952 and before are restrictive laws, are thou shalt not laws. We don't want laws. Stay out laws. So the news stories that we're seeing today, the arrests at the courthouses, the stopping people in the street, the sweeps of MacArthur Park in Los Angeles or Charlotte this week, in Latino neighborhoods or Asian neighborhoods, sometimes in Caribbean Black neighborhoods. That approach is permitted because Congress allows it. And because our courts have said immigration law is exceptional. It is not our traditional constitutional mantle of individual liberty protections. So I want to say, when you see something you believe is unjust, when you hear on the radio or from a person telling you about something you believe is unjust, trust your instinct. Trust your heart, your mind, your stomach. Feel the tension. But rather than turning it to just rhetoric, I'd like to suggest some ways you can be active if I have a few more minutes. Yes?
If you can do that in a couple of minutes, that
I'm
would be
gonna do it really quickly.
amazing.
Number one, you can be a witness. Marisela mentioned you can accompany people to court, and there are programs being run by the ABA and various local nonprofits that if you search in your community, they are looking for volunteers to go with people to court. You may not be able to stop the arrest, but you can witness the violence. You will hear an officer sometimes throw someone to the ground and say, stop resisting, but you can see the person is not. That may later be critical evidence in a civil rights claim that person is able to bring against an officer that abuses them in their physical well-being or their property. You can help that person by preparing, and in the resources I've given you, there's a preparation sheet. Where do you want your children to go? How can we contact you? You can teach them to perhaps help them memorize a phone number they can call to let you know where they are if they are detained. You can be a listener and compassionate to those who are in favor of immigration enforcement, and don't run away from the conversation. Listen to their reasoning. Often, recent immigrant communities are most in favor of tough immigration enforcement because they don't want to be demonized as the other, and they have an illusion that there will be a line and then everyone will accept me. A great melting pot. I'll finally melt into the pot. We know that isn't true. As Marisela said, all of our lives people will say, and where are you from? And then I would like to say, if you want to be more active, you can support legal education, you can support bond funds, you can write to Congress, you can train to become a standby guardian, you can be someone who becomes, even though you're not a lawyer, an accredited representative, authorized to represent people before the Immigration Service. If you'll do the education and perhaps retrain whatever your existing profession is, if you want to really roll up your sleeves, you can be like a lay lawyer. The law actually allows non-lawyers to provide legal assistance, and that's called becoming an accredited representative. I don't want to say it's super overnight, but it's something you could research if this is a passion for you. And then I welcome those of you who have colleagues that are lawyers or are you a lawyer yourself to find a way to give of your time. As I say to my students, in our long lives as career, there's nothing more transformative than a single person we serve with compassion and accompaniment, engaging arm in arm with them to navigate through the course to legal status. It's incredibly rewarding, but it's also life-changing for the other. And I can't think of a higher accomplishment or well-being for each of us than to know we've done a beautiful deed with someone to do our best to keep them safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, Lenni, that was wonderful. And thank you for distilling a lot of information into just these few minutes. Obviously, 90 minutes is just not enough for this conversation. It barely scratches the surface. What I'd like to do now, fairly quickly, if we can, because I know there's some really good questions, is to bring Tara and Lama Rod back on screen, so we have all of the presenters here. And maybe while that's happening, Lenni, a question came in that's maybe a simple one. That's, what is a standby guardian?
So, if you are unable to take care of your child or your mother, whomever it is that you need, you can actually, in most states, get a recognized order from your state court that says, should I become ill, disabled, out of the country, imprisoned, I would like my neighbor, Marisela, to be my child's guardian. There are background checks on who can be a guardian. It's not, again, something you can snap your fingers, and every state has different procedures. But even if you don't go through the court process, writing down a power of attorney and a potential guardianship can be very powerful as well to help someone get access to bank account funds or school records or medical treatment. And so I encourage each of you to look for community resources that will help you help your neighbor.
Thank you. So this question can be for anyone that might want to answer it. I'm struggling with the experience of being a person of color and an immigrant whose ancestors had to hide and assimilate for safety. How can I meet and metabolize the intergenerational fear of taking action or exposing myself even when my heart is wide open and I feel the pain and grief of what's happening to others as if it's happening in my own body?
I have a tendency to rush in and answer questions because that's my job as a lawyer. I would say I did bring this up in our preparation. I've always asked myself if at the time of the Holocaust, I'm a Jewish woman, my ancestors fled and were lucky and came before the Holocaust. But I always ask myself, would I have been the brave Dutch person? Would I have been the ally? And so I don't want to be naive about that. And for someone who is an immigrant and a person of color, it's much more difficult. But I would say everyone has their own level of comfort. But with education and research, you may find a place that you can find balance, and maybe you're helping raise bond funds, or maybe you're helping someone else get an education, supporting a lawyer who's exhausted every week by making soup for them. Most of the lawyers I know doing this work right now really could use friends. So that could be an answer. I hope the pain you're feeling is real. And the more we study it, I'm sure Tara and the Lamas will tell us as well that this is generational pain and in our bodies and all around us.
Yeah, thank you. Anything to add there, Tara or Lama Rod, Marisela?
I would just quickly add, for me, it's been important to just bring some focus and some attention back, like to my community. Like I think it's easy to get kind of wrapped up in trying to strategize against the forces, the policies like impacting us. But what I've been doing with folks around me is that we're just drawing a little closer inward to say, how can we resource each other right now to be sustainable through this, for this moment? Like, how do we take care of each other and resource each other so that those of us who have the capacity can be a little more public? Because I think, in communities that we're a part of, we all have different status, and so I think we need to pay attention to that and really just, for those of us who feel safer, who feel more resourced, kind of take that front lines position while we kind of help protect members of the community who may be more at risk and more vulnerable around these policies.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We've had, this question must be asked. We've had a few people that are in Charlotte, North Carolina, or in North Carolina. It's the state that I was born in. So this is also questions that are close to my heart. One question is, and it's representative. I'm in Charlotte, where over 300 people have been kidnapped by CBP and ICE since Saturday. I'm volunteering with local groups who are identifying and documenting detentions. I'm also attending protests daily. I'm exhausted, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. My anger is draining me. How do I learn to respond with love and compassion, even toward the CBP and ICE, rather than fear and anger? Tara, you want to take this one?
I'm glad to begin. I'd love to hear from others too. I think that's the challenge for so many of us, is that the anger is absolutely natural. It's intelligent. I mean, it's letting us know something horrible's happening and we have to act. But if we don't have a way to be intimate with what's under the anger, we end up burning out and actually causing ourselves harm. So when somebody, like when you say anger, I say you're caring about something. You're angry because you care. And if you can get in touch with that caring and hold hands with others that are caring, there's going to be a kind of nourishment to the soul that happens so that you can then act and don't try to do too much, but then you can act from a place of love. We need to pause enough to feel the anger and go under it to where our fear is, and under that to where our caring is. So I'm so grateful that this question's out there. It's a beautiful one. And thank you for what you're doing, your response to what's happening in Charlotte, because it's horrific.
Yeah. I think it goes somewhat to Marisela's question of how much are you willing to do? And there are people doing a lot, but it's a question for each one of us. And we do have to take care of ourselves too. This question's interesting too. It's from Chris, who says, I'm a Buddhist practitioner and teacher. In my experience, Buddhist teachers and their sanghas have been mostly silent, supporting people in difficult times through offering practice. He says, I'd so appreciate it if Buddhist teachers with widely known reputations would step forward and model and lead engaged bodhisattva activity on a national level, which I know you all are doing. But I just wonder if there's a response to that on how you see, our community responding and maybe ways that we could respond differently or more.
I mean, I'll say this. I often have a lot to say about this issue as someone who's very vocal about a lot of things, and a lot of folks come to me asking, why isn't this teacher saying something? Why isn't that teacher saying something? And I think part of it, my experience has been, I was an activist before I was a Dharma teacher. Actually, my door into Dharma was activism, which is kind of strange for a lot of people. But I saw Dharma and Buddhism as a vehicle for deeper action against systems of violence. And I think a lot of our Dharma teachers are really well-known Dharma teachers really are struggling to find language and vocabulary right now to talk, to integrate Dharma and justice together into their teachings, because they've never had to do that before. And I think that I have found myself becoming a support for for other Dharma teachers right now, just supporting them in incorporating justice into their work, and really cutting through the fear of what it costs to do that. Because Western Dharma, particularly in the United States, is definitely, for the most part, a tradition of comfort, right? It's come through middle, upper class, spaces, is very white, is older, right? And that equals comfort and stability. And I think there are some Dharma teachers who risk their livelihood if they choose to speak out because it will disrupt, right, the kind of comfort of their communities. So I find that some Dharma teachers are in a kind of a bind right now, which is really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, part of the purpose of tonight's event is just this, is not to be silent, but to have a conversation like this, to speak out, to hear one another, and to be in community. I think we just have time, unfortunately, for one more question, and I think this one's probably for Lenni. If we are present for an ICE incident, is it legal to take photos and or videos with our phone?
The answer is it depends what state you're in. Yeah, obviously, if you're in a public place, you can take a picture. That is true that inside the courthouses, there's a regulation that says you may not photograph in the courthouse, inside the courtroom of immigration. In the hallways, it's rented space usually from the Government Services Administration. They may try to stop you from filming there too. But recording in some states requires acknowledgement and consent from both parties. I'm in New York. It doesn't require both of us to consent. I think we have seen situations where people's cameras have been taken, they've been physically hit, they've been arrested themselves. There was an incident today in North Carolina. I cannot promise you that the current officers are well trained and that they won't cross the line. But that doesn't mean you can't educate yourself. And then if your rights are violated because your camera's taken, your car is injured, you yourself are arrested, almost always those charges are going to be dismissed. It's great discomfort, but they're going to be dismissed. And then you can bring a civil rights claim against the officer who has crossed the line. And I'm glad that we live in a country that, at least still in theory, we're a country of law and not of ruffians. And so it does take action for us to bring that complaint. I would also say, remember, I keep telling you, Congress is the one that controls immigration law. They've been very passive. And so bringing to the attention of Republicans, independents, socialists, Democrats, incidents that are personal to you is incredibly powerful and hard to look away from. And with enough of us raising our voices and speaking truth and showing what we've experienced, there's some social science that says it just takes less than 3% of a population to shift a view. So let's not think our actions aren't meaningful. They are meaningful. And even if they don't change tomorrow, we know we were part of the process toward change, and that's good for us.
Yes, amen. What a wonderful way to end this conversation. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of it. I think, one of the things, there's so many things that you all have shared, and thank you so much. I hope people will listen again to the recording because there's a lot of nuggets and a lot of information. I think the main thing, is not to look away. Not to look away and to, as Tara has said, to really ask ourselves continually what really matters to us. So this is really a first program as with IMCW, Insight Meditation Community of Washington, and Buddhist Coalition for Democracy. The first time that we've partnered together to do this. So I hope there will be others. So please be on the lookout for other events like this. And we realize that this conversation only scratches the surface and that things continue to evolve and shift and they're complicated. But I think today's event has really been an expression, certainly on the part of these two organizations and on the part of our presenters. And also, I think every one of you who have shown up to continue fostering awareness and compassion and action in the face of suffering. So I will now pass it back to Brenda, who will close us out and provide a little bit of information on maybe next steps and how you can stay engaged.
Thank you so much. I want to thank each one of you for your participation in bringing awareness, bringing your own experience to liberate all beings. And I invite the audience to engage in the liberation of all by taking action. As you perhaps know, there are many ways to take action, which we talked about tonight as well, which includes donating to organizations that provide hands-on support in immigrant justice, protest, write your Congress about the inhumane activities Join groups such as ours that are providing hands-on support to immigrant justice and any other issues that are important to you. You will receive an email. Each one of us will receive an email with additional resources available for you to take action. We are all grateful for this event, and I encourage that these town hall meetings or similar events will continue, bringing us enthusiasm and more compassion. So I once again special thank goes out to Buddhist Coalition for Democracy, Insight Meditation Center of Washington. Special thanks for the planning committee for this event, which was comprised of both groups. And a duly special recognition to Catherine Cole. I don't see her right now, but yeah. She kept us in hand. She kept us in the meetings on time. And so I want a special thanks to her. Now I want to end with a dedication of merit, as we always do. From my perspective, we dedicate the merit to show gratitude, express gratitude for our practices, for our time together, for sharing our Dharma. So we're going to close with, may all places be held sacred. May all beings be cherished. May all injustices of oppression, devaluation, and theft be fully righted, remedied, and healed. May all who are captured by hatred be freed to the love that is our birthright. May all who are bound by fear discover the safety of understanding. May all who are weighed down by grief be given over to the joy of being. May all who are lost in delusion find a home on the path of wisdom. May all wounds to forests, rivers, deserts, oceans, and wounds to Mother Earth be lovingly restored to bountiful health. May all beings everywhere delight in whale song, bird song, and blue sky. And finally, may all beings abide in peace and well-being, awaken and be free. May you go in peace. May you experience and give unconditional love, and may you be that which you seek. Thank you.
Don't delay, sing yours in right away. Hate's going round, breaking many hearts. Stop it, please, before it's gone too far. You sing some blues or anything, just sing anything. A little bit more. Come on, Blue. I do this to him every time.